Hi, and thank you for taking some time to look into GlassTrax. This short video demonstration will be primarily aimed at those who do little to no fabrication in-house. So it is primarily aimed at glazers and installers. Now GlassTrax is Windows-based, meaning it will work on any Windows setup that you have. It can be server client, a local server that you might have there, or it can be hosted on the cloud. GlassTrax has a number of different menu options, as you can see here, as well as a lot of different screens and buttons to access below. You have the ability to set which users have access to which screens, so it gives you full control over user permissions. So if you want someone to have just access to quote and order entry, you would turn off everything except for the quote and order entry portion or the quote and order entry screen. As I start in here, I'm going to jump in to do a quote. And I'm going to go ahead and start here. The type that it's referring to is, am I doing a quote or am I doing an order? I can hit Q for quote, O for order. I can always use my arrow keys, or I can use my mouse if I want to use that. Like I said, I'm going to start with a quote. I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab or Enter to autofill my next available quote number. Tab or Enter autofills today's date. You can put in a test job name or a job name there, and put in your customer's account. Now, if this is a walk-in or a customer who does not have an account already, you can set up a general cash or retail account, which is what I'll be using here. You would then fill in the customer's name, address, zip code. You can also get a little bit more information such as the phone, fax, email, and then a shipping location or an installation location as well. This allows you to look up this quote at a future date simply by typing in the person's name, their address, their phone number, partial of any of that information as well. You can look up and find this quote. I'm going to jump up here and put in a fake customer PO, which is not required, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in anyway. These ship via values are defined by you, so I've got just some sample values loaded in here. I'm going to select installation for this one. Now I've got my measure date and my install date. These are dates that you can recaption or label however you'd like. Our fabrication people have those set usually as ship date and production date, but because I'm mainly focusing here on those who do install or installations, I'm changing this to measure date and install date. As you look over here, we do have just quick buttons. I can tab, it'll autofill my next available date, but we have a schedule button here. Now this is our internal schedule in GlassTrax. It doesn't show a ton of information, but it does show you what you have scheduled to go out. I'm looking at every route right now, but you can actually filter this and say only show me truck number 2 or driver 2 or TO, whoever your driver is. And you can see what they have scheduled in single square footage, dual if they're doing any window installations. You can see the total square footage. You can also see the total weight, how much of it is tempered versus untempered. You can go ahead and get a good idea that way. And then you can set your capacity limits as well and make sure that you don't overload your trucks. In fact, you can get a pop-up to say you are approaching threshold on the capacity of your truck, or you have now crossed it. You need to go ahead and find a new date for this. We also integrate with Google Calendar, which is this link right here. When you send a Google Calendar, it will launch your Google account, and it will copy over all the order information such as the customer, the address, the phone numbers. All that information comes and automatically sticks into your Google Calendar, and then you just have to share that calendar with your drivers. So it can be managed by one account in Google and then shared with other Google drivers or Google accounts for your drivers, installers, and measuring people. We do have a full accounting module in GlassTrax. So if you choose to use GlassTrax for accounting, you can also take payments in here. You can manage their customers' accounts, invoice, do all that stuff from GlassTrax. That's why you can see the pay type is cash for this customer. However, we do integrate with QuickBooks, with Sage, Peachtree, Great Plains, Windows Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics. So it's up to you. In my experience, I think the GlassTrax accounting is great, but I also know that accountants can be very resistant to change and changing software. And if it's one more thing to change, then you may want to consider just using our integration formats and using the current software that you're using for accounting. You can always switch to GlassTrax accounting later on down the road as well. So, all right, I'm going to come down here to the buttons at the bottom. I can go ahead and put in my my detail next. My make order button will convert this quote to an order. UDF stands for user defined field. You can go ahead and set those up for yourselves. Order notes, pretty self-explanatory there. Customer notes, these are notes on the customer's account, so they're rolling for the entirety of the account, not just on this quote. The account activity will show you past invoices, open invoices, closed invoices, past payments, Basically, you're aging at a glance for this customer if you are using GlassTrax accounting. Quote finished. We'll finish this quote, and then we'll worry about these two buttons in just a moment. I'm going to go to quote detail here. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that's fine. All right, so I'm going to say tab or enter for line 1. This outside center inside allows me to build an insulated unit on the fly. So if you are not an insulator, that's no problem. If you install Windows and you want to be able to specify to your vendor what you want in an IG, use these fields. You can also turn these fields off if you don't do Windows. But they can be very useful because you can come in here and say, well, I want it to be a quarter clear over a quarter clear. And that will go ahead and generate this item ID. And then you can come down here to your material source and you would select buyout. You can have those automated as well to go to buyout. The other option is direct. That means your vendor is going to direct ship this to your customer for you. I'm going to go ahead and say we want 3 pieces of this. And we're going to make it 27.5. Notice you can use decimals and it will automatically correct itself to fractions. Or you can go ahead and just say, let's do fractions. Okay. I've got my overall thickness set to 3/4 of an inch. That means I need a 1/4 inch spacer. So that will be automatically calculated based on your preference. If I change this now to, hey, 7/8, it'll say, okay, well, you need a 3/8 inch spacer. I'm going to go ahead and use a black spacer on this. Do a quick lookup with the binoculars up here and find my black aluminum spacer. So my pricing will automatically populate. It will do it based on square footage for me. I can also change that to, hey, show me per piece. I can also add different things to this window. If I want to add grids, for example, or bars, I come to processing and I can hit add. I'm going to type in bars. Now, most of my customers have specified, hey, these are, 5/8 inch white grids. I just have a generic bars here. And I'm going to say, let's do 2 horizontal, 2 vertical. Make it nice and easy. We can charge for this by the square foot, or you can charge by the opening in here. It's up to you to set that up. And say done. On here, it'll appear mutton bars, horizontal 2, vertical 2. We added $400 in fees because of that, putting those bars in. And now my per piece price is $166 per window for the customer. When I'm done, I can say line finished, and I am going to skip that as it says we can't add argon to that type of window. And I'm going to hit tab or enter again to start filling line 2. Now in this case, I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to do a heavy shower glass, and I'm going to make it tempered. And again, I'm going to make this a buyout. And we're going to do 1, and it's going to be 40 by 78. Okay. In this case, I need my vendor to add a few things. So I need him to add, let's add him some Mickey Mouse cutouts. I need 2 of those per piece. I'm going to add some holes. Let's do 2 of those for the handle. And I'm going to add a polished edge. I need all 4 sides polished. And I'm done. So as you can see, we added $67 now in processing fees. So now my per piece for this shower is $143.50. And again, if you want to show this square foot, just change it back. Whoops, square foot right there. Okay. However you want it, whatever you have this set to is what your customer will see on your paperwork. I'm going to say line finished. Now I forgot, this is tempered. And because this is tempered, my vendor requires that I just define whether I put in logo, no logo, customer logo, special logo. So if I say okay, it takes me to this field and says, oh yeah, logo. Now I can say line finished. Now one thing I failed to mention was that you, as a customer, a new customer of GlassTrax, you have the option to send us all the information you can as far as your customer information, their addresses, names, phone numbers, things like that, their customer preferences, your products, your pricing, your vendors and their pricing. You send all that information to us in spreadsheets, and we will go ahead and import that into GlassTrax, create your own GlassTrax database for you for free as part of your purchase. That way, when we do training, it just sticks a little better because you're seeing names that are familiar, products that are familiar, pricing that makes sense. Once I'm done with this quote, I'm going to go ahead and say quote finished. And one or more, this is saying it's taxable. I'm just going to make them non-taxable for now. We do have the ability to have a nice tax code or tax report as well. I'm going to say, all right, quote finished. I can go ahead and print preview this. Now this is a quote format done by one of our customers. Your paperwork can be completely customized. So this is just an example. It doesn't necessarily mean that's how your paperwork is going to look, but you have the option to use this format if you'd like. So this is just a simple sample here that we've got. You can go ahead and auto email this based on customer preference as well, or you can manually email by clicking the email button, and it will go ahead and launch whatever email service you're using. If you're using Google, if you're using Outlook, you can use those formats or those programs, and we will send those out. All right, so once that's done, the quote clears out. Well, now let's say the customer calls back and they want to go ahead and move forward with that quote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, I'm looking for a quote. Now I can cheat because I know the last one I put in right here is, and just click on that and everything comes back in. Or I can say, well, it's been a couple days. It's not the last quote I put in. I'm going to click my binoculars here. And it was a cash customer. And you can put in your job name. As I said, you can search by the sales rep who input it. You can do by the order date. You can put in your ship address. You can search by the phone number or partials of any of that information. That's why we have that little asterisk right here. So you can do partial of the ship address, hit asterisk, and hit display records. It will find what you're looking for. In this case, this is the one we just did. If you want to make sure, you hit the view detail, and it shows you what's on the order. That's exactly what we were expecting. Select that quote. And then I'm just going to come down here and say make it an order. It asks me if I'm sure I want to make it an order. I say yes. And now it's assigning it an order number, at which point I can now fill in an install date if I have one, right? And I'm going to come down here and just say, hey, everything's good. Order's finished here. It's asking, do you want to create a pack list? Now, for those of you who are not managing inventory, this is not a big deal other than that it's nice to have a piece of paperwork that shows the guys what you need to have loaded on the truck. So I'm going to go ahead and create this, and then I'm going to go ahead and, again, print preview this. Again, this is just a sample. It's one of the formats we offer, but we also are constantly adding more formats for new customers. So as you can see, there's no pricing on this. The guys loading the trucks don't necessarily need to know that. Now, this order has two lines that are on buyout, meaning I have to issue a purchase order for these. So I can send out my confirmation to my customer. Again, email, I can fax, print, whatever is easiest for your customer, whatever they prefer. But I need to create a purchase order for this order now. So I'm going to go ahead and create a purchase order by clicking just create PO. It's going to go ahead and show you what you have marked on PO. And all you have to do now is say, I'm buying this from Glassman, okay? Or whichever vendor you're using. You can use the binoculars to do a lookup. And hit create PO. I want to copy over my notes. I'm going to go ahead and just use that as my purchase order number. It'll autofill with everything I need here. And I go to the detail. I need to put in a ship date from the vendor. And it autofills with what I want that vendor to send me. I have pricing set for these two items already, or costs set from these vendors already. But if not, this will populate at 0, and you'll be prompted to put in a price that you're paying to your vendor. But since I already had those set, all I have to do now is say order's finished. And at this point, you can email, fax, print, send this to your vendor. We also have some EDI exports, which is that export order button up here. EDI is for your integration files. So if you have a vendor using a software that we integrate with, all you have to do is hit that export order, and it will send them a file, and all they have to do on their end is hit import, and everything that you ordered comes into their software. So that helps eliminate the miscommunications, maybe some typos on your vendor side, because whatever you put into your purchase order is exactly what they'll be getting in their software. And I'm not going to print preview a purchase order just because it is, again, customizable. Just know that you can email that, fax, print, or do your export order option. Now, once you have that ready, you're waiting for that to come in. We have a cool status report screen that I'm going to go ahead and show you. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but obviously you can see we have multiple screens open at once. That is one advantage to being Windows-based, and a little bit different compared to some competitors, which is shocking to me in this year, that we don't have more Windows-based options where you can have multiple windows open within a program. But to show you that report that I was mentioning earlier, we have this buyout report, buyout order status. And what this does is it shows you by color code where everything is at. Now, you can set your own colors up here with the color wheel, but mine's fairly simple. I have it set as if it's red, it means the order has buyouts on it, and I have not even issued a purchase order to a vendor yet. If it's this orangish yellow color, then it means, yeah, the order has a buyout, but I've already issued a purchase order. I have not yet gotten that material from my vendor yet. And if it's green, it means that we have already received that from my vendor. I issued a purchase order. I got it back. I got the material from my vendor. Okay. So here is actually ours right. It's this one right here, these two lines. And so you can see it's yellow because we issued that purchase order already. Now, if I were to go ahead and mark those as received, those would turn green. One other thing that's cool in GlassTrax is anytime you see a report like this, where it is a grid or an Excel format kind of, you can right-click, export to Excel, and it will go ahead and export all this into information to an Excel. We go in and out of Windows products really easily just because it is we're Windows based. On top of that, we have some really easy invoicing options. We have a cool shipping screen as well, which allows you to load your trucks, print out a manifest, and then send your drivers a Google Map or Bing Map or MapQuest. Now, people laugh when I say MapQuest, but it's actually quite useful. We have the option here to say, let's right-click and say Show in MapQuest. The reason I say MapQuest is actually fairly useful is because MapQuest has an optimization option where you can send out a number of different jobs that you're going to do in any order you want, and MapQuest will actually reorder them to be the most efficient route for you, and then you can again export those instructions or those driving instructions to your installers and measuring techs. On top of that, we do have a cool app. It's called our Digital Shippers app. And what it does is it allows your drivers, your installers, your measuring techs to go out and measure or install and send back information, as well as collect signatures from your customers who are signing off on a job. Those notes that your driver sends back to you can appear in a box down here for the person who entered the order. It can also, it speeds up communication between, hey, they measured wrong, or hey, this isn't going to work, or hey, they changed their mind on hardware, whatever it might be. Or hey, we've got this done, it's installed. Here is the signed shipper, we called the signed document saying yes, the customer signed off on it, and that gets automatically attached to the original quote and order. So no paper there, it just comes back automatically. The last thing I mentioned was the invoicing. We do have the option to do invoices one at a time, or you can do batch invoicing. Now this is pretty slick because it allows you to invoice a bunch of different customers with a bunch of different orders all at once, and then on top of that, it will sort out the customer preferences for you. So I could literally come down here and say, let's do all those, and it checks those over here. And based on customer preference, whether like their invoice is emailed, faxed, or printed, it will email, fax, or print those invoices. So no worrying about customer preferences and sorting through. Let me do this batch for those that need them printed. Let me do that batch for those that like them emailed. It's all at once, and we figure it out for you. Again, you just hit invoice selected. It'll generate a print preview if you want one. Otherwise, it'll go ahead and just email those that need to be emailed, fax those that need to be faxed, and print those that need to be printed. So that is our quote and order entry through the scheduling, through Google or through our own calendar, through the trucking and loading the trucks, as well as invoicing. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. Our email is sales@kssco.com, and then again, kimseysoftwaresolutionsco.com, so kssco.com. Or you can feel free to give us a call. Our phone number is 435-652-8330. My name is Tyson. Feel free to give me a call personally anytime. I'd be happy to answer any questions or do a demonstration for you in person to answer your questions as we go through. Again, thank you for your time.